like show business like no business I know.
And as you know, the road to the White House goes right through this chair right here.
Right through there, yeah.
Right through there.
George W.
The restrictions that are being imposed on the debate, this is virgin territory as far as the debates are concerned.
Ladies and gentlemen, top 10 Bush tax proposals.
Oh, my God.
Stipulations that dictate whether or not a third-party challenger can participate. Stipulations that require the moderators to be selected by the candidates.
Everything about it is appealing.
Thank you, sir.
Very handsome, Senator.
Everything that traffic will allow. When you are speeding that extra bar, nowhere could you get that happy feeling.
Were y'all spankers? Did you spank them?
Really? Very often.
Tonight, politics unusual.
Let's go on with the show.
From ABC News. This is Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Chris Bury.
The old joke here in Washington is that politics is merely show business for ugly people. That's a bit harsh, of course, but it is fair to say that this campaign season, the line between politics and showbiz has blurred like never before, a topic we'll explore later in the program. But first, the performance at hand. Tomorrow night, President Bush and Senator Kerry square off in their first debate, and already the campaigns have been setting the stage in that ancient debate custom known as the expectations game.
George Bush has proved time and time again that he's a very persuasive debater.
George Bush is a very, very good debater. We know that.
Let's face it, George Bush won the election 4 years ago in the debates.
This is a moment that John Kerry's frankly been preparing for his entire life.
Senator Kerry has spent his life debating.
He was an all-star debater in prep school. He was an all-star debater in Ivy League school.
Those surrogates, of course, are trying to convince the public that their opponent is such a brilliant debater that if their man just shows up with a warm pulse, he'll beat expectations and therefore win the debate. It's all part of an elaborate ritual in which virtually nothing is left to chance, as we hear from Nightline correspondent Jim Wooten.
Since this one in 1976, when Jerry Ford picked up Poland and carried it toward the wrong goal line,
there is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe.
There have been 22 more of them with assorted presidents and governors, vice presidents and senators, a congressman, a congresswoman, and oh yes.
And give the American people a Christmas present.
And they all took place within some critical context. Hostages in Iran, a crumbling Soviet Union, genocide in Bosnia, the AIDS epidemic, Somalia, Kosovo, and yet...
There you go again.
And yet, what many Americans remember...
Who am I? Why am I here?
...are the one-liners.
Senator, I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Of course, such zingers were never any guarantee of success. This fellow became vice president. This one didn't. But they did provide at least a semblance of, well, something resembling a genuine debate.
That was really uncalled for, Senator.
Which is only remotely possible this year. And here's why. This agreement between the two campaigns, it's called a Memorandum of Understanding, and what it does, or what it tries to do, is to eliminate any surprise and any spontaneity in Miami or in the later venues. Every possible contingency has been covered here. So many tiny details that some have come to see this document as slightly silly, while others say it's downright disgraceful.
This is outrageous.
George Farah, whose new book about the debates, argues they're not open at all and not really debates.
You're watching a series of glorified bipartisan press conferences that exclude third-party voices and stultify all the formats.
Professor Alan Schroeder says these debate contracts aren't new. However,
what's different this time around is the amount of detail that's being devoted, particularly to the format.
The agreement was negotiated by Republican James Baker, former Secretary of State, and Vernon Jordan, an old hand for the Democrats. And what they've created is a veritable jungle of rules and regulations of what's acceptable and what isn't. As this Washington Post story put it, no walking around the podium, no props, no prepared notes, no hidden risers, no TV reaction shots of family or audience members, and no back-of-the-head camera angles either. And yes, you can bring your own makeup, people.
Well, there's a lot of silly minutia details that are rooted in history. For example, the Bush campaign insisted that there be timer lights showing how much time is left in each question visible to the public. So it's going to look like a game show. You're going to have all these colors visible to the public.
Why? Because Mr. Kerry can be loquacious.
Here's what we need to do. Number one.
And the Bush campaign would like the audience to see him going past his allotted time, violating the rules. And consider this. Mr. Bush and Mr. Kerry will be only 10 feet apart, precisely specified in the agreement, but they can't talk to each other, can't ask each other any questions.
That's in there because the candidates are terrified of anything that might throw them off their game.
They can watch each other, of course, but viewers are forbidden to watch them watching. From the agreement, no pictures of any candidate who's not responding to a question while another candidate is answering a question.
Why is that? Because in 1992, President Bush, the first President Bush, number 41, was caught looking at his watch during a town hall debate, and it looked like he was bored out of his mind. And as a result, his son insisted no camera shots of the candidate who's not actually speaking.
How will your tax proposals affect me?
Another town hall with audience questions is planned this cycle, too.
But this year, the citizens not only have to write the questions down in advance and have them approved by the moderator, but if they vary from the wording in asking the question during the debate, the moderator has to shut them up and their microphones will be turned off. To me, this is un-American.
There have to be rules, of course. There are high stakes here. Here's a high stakes rule. The candidates can make notes, but can only use pencils or pens and blank paper inspected and approved before the debate. Nothing like that in this simple little memo that finalized plans for Kennedy and Nixon in 1960. Just 3 little points about choosing a panel of reporters. The irony here is that this year's agreement has only 2 signatures, Ken Mehlman of the Bush campaign and Mary Cahill for Senator Kerry. Nobody else. Not the sponsor, the Commission on Presidential Debates, and more importantly, not the networks and not the cable news channel. So this sheaf of do's and don'ts is binding only on the candidates. And it's just possible that all their rules and restrictions about camera angles and reaction shots and all that, anything having to do with the way the television broadcast is broadcast, all of that could just be ignored. And that just might lead to a real debate. I'm Jim Wooten for Nightline in Washington.